I'd like to start off by thanking the Center for Evidence-Based Crime Policy for inviting me here today, especially Professors Lum and Weisberg, and also 3 graduate students, Cody Tellep for putting most of this together, Dave McClure, who helped me with my slides, and also Julie Willis, who drove me in from Manassas. And the trip felt as long as if I'd flown in from England, or even driven from England if that was possible. So I'm especially indebted to her. So American police agencies have long been concerned with how they're perceived by the public, and this helps explain why they've been so willing to innovate. Now, 2 of the most highly touted innovations to have emerged over the last 25 years are COMPSTAT and community policing. Now, today what I'm going to do is discuss some possible ways to integrate these reforms. So it's kind of a thought experiment for you to envision how you might integrate these reforms in ways that may promise greater legitimacy effects than merely having them operate side by side or in parallel. Now, this topic stems from a recent study I conducted along with some colleagues that was funded by the Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, the COPS office. It's hard to say when you haven't had a drink for 4 hours. Our findings suggested that these reforms, when implemented in the same police organization, operate largely independently, each sort of having little effect on the other. Now, it's important to recognize, I think, that the recommendations I propose here have yet to be implemented and tested. So my purpose is to use existing research to suggest some plausible changes and areas for future inquiry. Now, the potential for integrating COMPSTAT and community policing is an important issue. According to a national survey conducted in 2006, a majority of large police departments are pursuing both reforms simultaneously. Now, legitimacy is a bit of a fuzzy concept, but you can think of it as the judgments or assessments that ordinary people make about the rightfulness of police conduct and the organizations that employ them. So some examples might include an officer speaking to someone respectfully, or a police department providing an efficient response to calls for service. Now, research suggests, and this is why this is important, that the more legitimacy the police have, the more effective they can be in accomplishing their goals. More specifically, there is consistent evidence showing that when the public views the police as legitimate, they are more inclined to do a number of things. One is obey the law, which most of us probably want, comply rather than challenge an officer's request when an officer asks them to do something or not do something, such as provide information or cease being disorderly, more inclined to assist the police by providing information that helps with the identification, arrest, and conviction of offenders, more inclined to proactively participate in community crime prevention programs, and more inclined to grant the police broad discretion to fight crime in ways that police leaders consider to be most effective, but might be unpopular, such as increasing person or vehicle stops in high crime areas. So if police act in ways that promote legitimacy, they can become more effective in controlling crime and disorder and in gaining public support. So this is not touchy-feely policing. It has real outcomes. Now, both COMPSTAT and community policing seek to enhance police legitimacy, but they do so in somewhat different ways. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with COMPSTAT, so I shall be brief. This is a strategic management system first implemented in the New York City Police Department in 1994. Now, a great deal of the legitimacy that COMPSTAT confers on police organizations comes from its attempt to focus an agency's energies like a laser on its crime control mission. In this case, legitimacy depends heavily upon the success of the agency's crime reduction efforts, its outcomes. And indeed, existing studies suggest that crime effectiveness is an important source of legitimacy. But research, and I think this is important, also suggests that an even more potent source is tapped when police fulfill public expectations about policing processes. That is by attending to how people feel they are being treated by the police. Now, this is a very valuable insight because police can exert far more control over how they treat people than they can over the crime rate. Now, in contrast to COMPSTAT, community policing places a much higher priority on developing relationships with local communities. Now, crime reduction obviously is still a major goal, but equally important objectives include building police community partnerships and working with community members to solve minor crimes and quality of life problems. So community policing, more than COMPSTAT perhaps, emphasizes the processes through which the police interact with the public. Research shows that public assessments of the police are powerfully shaped by the extent to which people feel like the police treat them with fairness and consideration. And this is what is known in the scholarly literature as procedural justice. So what are the key elements to people's procedural justice judgments? Knowing these may give insights into how to integrate COMPSTAT's crime control or outcome focus with community policing's stronger emphasis on the processes of treating people right. At this point, I should recognize, given the diversity of members of the audience, that perceptions of procedural justice have much broader implications than just policing. They influence the public assessments of other criminal justice institutions, such as the courts and probation and parole, as Professor Taxman's done in some of her work, and even alternatives in criminal justice, such as restorative justice. So what are the specific aspects of procedural justice that seem to matter? Participation. People are more satisfied with procedures that allow them to give input before a decision is made about how to handle a specific problem. Neutrality. People look for even-handedness and objectivity when police make decisions. Dignity and respect. People value being treated with politeness and having their rights acknowledged. And motives. People are more likely to see procedures as fair when they trust the motives of decision makers. In fact, perhaps these characteristics are all things that we could use in our everyday relationships and our marriages and those kinds of things. So knowing these, what might be some ways to integrate these reforms to enhance police legitimacy? I suggest 3 ways. And I'm sure many of you could probably come up with more, but here's a start. First, the centerpiece of COMPSTAT is frequent crime control meetings in front of top leadership. At these meetings, middle managers are held accountable for knowing about the serious crime in their beats and for devising timely and effective solutions. Unfortunately, this focus tends to ignore the kind of minor crime and quality of life problems that tend to be of the greatest concern to community members, such as vandalism, graffiti, abandoned cars, these kinds of things. So to be more responsive to these concerns, police departments could devise systematic ways to help identify the most pressing problems in different communities, problems that community members themselves have identified as important. These could then be discussed during regular COMPSTAT meetings and alongside serious crime problems. In this way, police legitimacy would be strengthened by giving citizens an important role in helping set police priorities and by having the police respond directly to those problems that matter most to the public. Community participation under COMPSTAT is necessary only insofar as it can contribute directly to the reduction of the problem at hand. Under community policing, however, community participation in problem solving is highly valued as an end in and of itself. Our site visit suggested that under these reforms, community participation in the problem-solving process was of a less active sort. Laura, you're right, it's really distracting. A more integrated COMPSTAT and community policing model would actively engage community members in all stages of the problem-solving process. So such an approach could help create the kind of balanced and cooperative community policing model that promises to enhance police legitimacy. I just have a couple more slides. The third recommendation. Lastly, at most of the departments we visited, and we visited 7 police departments, COMPSTAT crime statistics and maps were made freely available on the web. But these data were not presented in ways that solicited feedback, nor helped develop understanding between the police and the community. So I think this is a missed opportunity. The presentation of objective crime data at community meetings could help strengthen the views of police as being neutral and even-handed in how they make decisions about how to mobilize. It could also help garner citizen support and cooperation in implementing a particular policing approach, such as aggressively focusing police resources at crime hotspots, as Professor Weisberg's work and others has shown. This has been shown to be an effective strategy for preventing crime, but it also has the potential to harm police-community relations, thus undermining police legitimacy. Police could use data identifying those places that are highest risk for crime to help explain their decisions and make their motives transparent. And this could help garner support for particular police activities by mitigating concerns that certain groups are being singled out unfairly as the focus of police attention. So, to sum up, the little research that has been done on the relationship between COMPSTAT and community policing suggests that there may be opportunities for integrating these reforms to enhance police legitimacy. Now, whether and how this could be accomplished would require additional research in at least 2 areas. First, legitimacy. Nearly all the research on police legitimacy has been in the form of surveys, asking people how they perceive the police as legitimate and how they would behave and these kinds of things. What is needed then is an experimental field study testing the key propositions of legitimacy policing, especially the relationship between procedural justice and crime. And I know Professors David Weisbord and Stephen Mostrovsky are interested in this, and Cody Telep as well. And second, the integration of COMPSTAT in community policing. What is needed is experimentation with different configurations of these reforms and their evaluation to see if they could be combined to deliver greater legitimacy benefits than currently on offer. Now, departments have already invested heavily in these reforms, so opportunities to improve them within these existing frameworks are likely to be very appealing. Thank you.